Today we'll be speaking with Randy the Natural Couture and find how he got his start in MMA and what made him become Captain America. You only find out here on The Essence of MMA. I'm here in Las Vegas, Nevada, Extreme Couture MMA with Hall of Fame Mixed Martial Arts Champion, Randy Couture. Hi Randy, how are you?
Good to see you, Tim.
All right, good to see you. How old were you when you started martial arts? And what martial art? And why'd you start that martial art?
Okay, well, for me, martial arts was a little bit different because I started in wrestling. Wrestling at 10 years old. And wrestling, for most people, wasn't really considered a martial art, even though wrestling goes all the way back to the ancient Olympic Games as one of the first combative sports. And when we can see hieroglyphics on Egyptian pyramids with wrestling technique, and it's been going on from the dawn of mankind, it was never really considered a martial art. It was just considered a sport. And I don't think until wrestlers like me started foraying into mixed martial arts did wrestling kind of get elevated to a martial arts status. I started at 10 years old. And I think I largely started to get my dad's attention. I'd always heard that he was a wrestler when he was a kid, and so he wasn't around much, and I kind of wanted to get his attention. So one thing led to another. My best friend's older brothers were wrestling, and I ended up on a wrestling mat in a novice wrestling tournament in the 6th grade. And then
how'd you do in that tournament?
I got my first bloody nose and pinned the kid with a headlock. I didn't even know what a headlock was. And I rolled into 7th grade the next year, and the PE teacher was the wrestling coach. He remembered me from that novice tournament. He's like, "Wrestling starts Monday, I'll see you there." And I'm like, "All right."
Yeah.
And I started turning out, and I've been wrestling ever since. So fighting and mixed martial arts kind of became an extension of wrestling for me.
So what other elements do you know as a martial artist outside of the fighting?
Probably the biggest thing for me is a particular mindset. And I always call it, looking through the eyes of that wrestler that I started to become at 10 years old. So every single problem or obstacle that I come up against in my life, whether it's on a mat or anywhere else, I kind of look through those wrestlers' eyes. I bring that work ethic, that intensity. I break down the problems and figure out how to solve them. Those are all things I learned on a wrestling mat as a wrestler and a martial artist. So I think that mindset has carried me down the road, and in business and every other thing that I've done allowed me to be successful.
Because of your ability to get your mind focused in and tunneled in on one thing.
Because I see the problem, I see what the issue is, and now I'm going to figure out how to solve that problem. For me, that's what wrestling and martial arts are. It's like kinetic chess. Every single guy I stand across the cage from has got a particular offense and defense. He poses a set of physical problems for me to solve, and I have to figure out the best way how I match up to that person and figure out the best way to solve that problem.
So your focus and concentration that you had from wrestling it gave you the ability to hone in on things, and now you use it in your everyday life.
I try to apply that mindset, that approach that allowed me success on a wrestling mat to every other thing I do in my life.
Boom. Was that mindset something that is of your own that you learned before you started martial arts or before you started wrestling, or did you develop that mindset when you were in wrestling?
I think that that mindset is something that develops when you spend time on a mat, engaged in one-on-one competition with another guy. You have to figure, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. You got to figure out why you lost, and you don't want that to happen again. You don't want to experience that kind of adversity. So you do the things you need to do. You make the adjustments, both technically and physically, so that doesn't happen again. And when I start looking through those same eyes and applying that to, okay, here's the issues that I want to start this business and I want it to be successful. I need this, 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 and this. I'm going to apply that same mentality to solving those issues and getting that in a position to be successful and to win. And I think that if you look at the best martial artists, the best wrestlers that I know, they all have that similar mindset. They all do those similar things and apply themselves in a very similar fashion to be successful.
So Randy, what are the differences between martial arts then and martial arts now, and what are the similarities between martial arts then and now?
Well, it's interesting, in my opinion. Obviously the original martial arts and combative sports were all fashioned to sharpen fighting age males and their fighting skills, because you never knew when the guys in the town next to you were going to invade. So you needed a warrior class, a standing army, if you will, that had sharp tools. Yes, that had sharp tools that were able to defend your city, defend your women and children, your population, your livestock, your crops, all those things that were important for survival back then. And I think obviously as time went on, it became a little less important, but we still have standing armies. I do seminars now with some of our elite forces in teaching them hand-to-hand combat. We've gotten back to close quarters combat, and because we're now in a style of warfare where we're moving from house to house and in urban style environments, and you need to have those skills now. It's not just standing on this side of the line shooting bullets at those guys over there anymore. And we went through that kind of period, but it's changed. So I think some of the things that were important back in ancient times have now come back to the forefront, and mixed martial arts certainly has become a model for that in some ways.
So it's come around in full circle again.
I think in some ways it's definitely come around full circle, and a lot of those same tactics and mindset and skills that we use now as a sport to just for fun, for entertainment, have also become important in today's warrior, in today's soldier.
So today the warriors have to be disciplined and do their training and have self-discipline, have motivation, have positivity to go into their training in order to succeed, to be a champion. And where it came from was these guys had to protect their village if they didn't have discipline to train, and they weren't staying on their regimen and being true to themselves. They weren't able to be the warriors that they were to protect their people.
Absolutely. They were going to lose everything they had if they did not have a sharp standing army, skilled warriors to defend their borders, to defend their town and the things and people that they love. And I think the same thing is true now. We're putting a lot of soldiers in harm's way, fighting a war on terror and people that don't believe the same things we believe. And if they hope to go into those situations and be effective and survive, they need to have very sharp, very specific skill sets. And I think hand-to-hand, close quarters combat and the combatives that we teach them now all lend themselves to that.
So the same fundamentals from martial arts is the same thing used in the military in battle today?
I think it's used in the military, and obviously for me, I apply that same mindset to every single thing I try to do, everything I try to accomplish. I got a movie role coming up. I'm going to be prepared. I'm going to figure out that character and be mentally and physically prepared to go in and do what I need to do to pull that off and be successful in that. Now that's a completely innocuous situation, but I'm looking through those same eyes to be successful in that situation.
Through the years in martial arts, have there been certain techniques or certain philosophies on things that have been lost that maybe they used back then but they don't use now?
I think we've seen with the popularity and the growth of mixed martial arts around the globe, everywhere, we've seen guys with specific martial arts philosophies and backgrounds that are able to sharpen the effective tools in that style of martial art. And there's just about every country in the world that has their own style of martial arts that's indigenous to their people. And we've seen guys that are able to use some of those tactics and techniques from those styles of martial arts and be effective in a combined sport like mixed martial arts. So although some of them may be less prevalent than others, I mean, we don't see a lot of kung fu martial artists that have risen to the top ranks in the sport of MMA, but we've certainly seen guys use some, straight blast and some techniques that came from Kung Fu
So a little bit
and adapted it to their individual fighting style to make it work. You look at Lyoto Machida, who I competed against and trained to compete against, who's a Kyokushin karate guy. And we see a lot of high-level Kyokushin karate guys in mixed martial arts, no, but he's certainly, as an individual fighter that he is, uses that background and the skill sets that he developed from growing up in that style of fighting very effectively as an elite martial artist.
As a martial artist, do you feel that martial arts has gotten better from the past, or do you think that it's gotten more watered down from the past?
I think with the popularity and growth of mixed martial arts, what we're seeing is a mixing. We're kind of seeing some of the traditional barriers where you can only do this style of martial arts, and there was really no crossover. It was kind of faux pas to go, okay, you know what, this has been fun, but now I'm going to go train in that style of martial arts. That wasn't really too acceptable. I think the first guy we've seen do that was Bruce Lee, and he kind of was chastised for crossing those boundaries between traditional styles of martial arts. And I think now with MMA and guys coming from all sorts of backgrounds and wanting to compete in a mixed sport where I came from a wrestling background, that guy came from a Muay Thai background. I'm gonna have to figure out and do some cross training, learn some of these other skills in order to solve that problem. It's kind of broken down some of those very, very distinct walls and allowed for some of this crossover between styles and this amalgamation of martial arts, if you will, where all of us now are coming together in a cage just like this one and kind of, letting it hang out and the chips fall where they may, and it becomes what's much more important about the individual martial artist, his flexibility, his speed, his strength, the amount of training he did. Is he able to put his opponent in the situations that give him the best chance to win, and a lot less about that specific distinct style of martial art. So I think in a lot of ways it's become better. It's opened up those boundaries. They're a little grayer than they used to be. They're not so black and white.
When people are competing in martial arts, a lot of times their life will be going great because they have a date for a fight, so they have their discipline and they have everything in their life going well. When they retire, a lot of times that particular fighter will fall. What is it about you and about other people who are successful outside of their competition career that makes them so successful?
Well, I think when you're engaged in the competition, it's a very disciplined. I'm training at this time, I'm eating at that time, I'm sleeping at this time every night. It's very structured. And I think when you retire or you stop competing, the necessity for that structure kind of goes away. And so now you have to rely on yourself to create that discipline and that structure for everyday life, not just because you got another guy that's going to stand across the cage and potentially kick you in the head or punch you in the face. So you have to apply those same skills, that same mentality to everyday problems, to everything else you want to accomplish, and create that same structure, that same discipline. And I think once you can make that adjustment and apply that same discipline to everything else you want to do, you're going to be fine. But some guys flounder around and it feels weird, and you don't have that fight, it's the pinnacle of your existence. You never feel more alive than when you walk up in that cage and you got that guy standing there and you've done that work. So finding a way to apply that same thing to more mundane things, more going to work every day, doing whatever, taking care of your family, whatever it is that you need to apply it to after fighting, it can be difficult.
So martial arts for you gave you the structure that after you were done competing, you still had that structure in you and it's helped your life now?
Absolutely, absolutely true. I think I have to apply that mindset, that mentality, and figure out the discipline and the structure that I need to be successful in whatever it is I'm trying to do.
For a young man or young fighter looking to get into competition, what kind of advice would you give them?
If they're looking to compete, I think one of the most important things you need is you need that team, you need that environment. As much as this is an individual sport, you're only as good as the guys you're hanging around with, the guys you're training with, sweating with, bleeding with. They're going to make you better, they're going to push you to the limit, but they're never going to cross that line and put you in harm's way or intentionally hurt you or out to prove that they're bigger or better than you are. And there's a very fine line there. So I think finding that coach, those trainers, and that environment of training partners is the most important thing for your well-being, your mentality, and developing all the things you need as a well-rounded martial artist. And that's not always an easy thing to find. And then I think having fun. You can't take yourself so seriously. I think I see that in a lot of young guys that I want to be a champ, and they're really intense. But I mean, you got to have fun at doing this. If it's not fun, why are you going to do anything? So finding a way to put yourself in those adverse situations, the training and the competition, but find a way to make it fun and run at it and work at it and have fun doing it.
Without martial arts in your life, where would you be right now?
Well, honestly, I don't think I could imagine my life without martial arts, without wrestling and the combative sports. I played a ton of team sports, and it just wasn't the same thing for me. So I think that like a duck to water, a pig to mud, I found that thing I needed, and that fit me in the combative sports training that I've done, and being on a wrestling mat and being in a martial arts environment. I can't imagine my life without it.
Where do you see the future of martial arts?
With the popularity and insurgence of mixed martial arts around the globe, and just about every market and the commercialness of that, I think it's going to continue to solidify itself as the combative sport for this generation and future generations. I don't see that changing. I think that it's been part of man and our society since the dawn of man, and I don't think that's ever going to change. I think there's always going to be a need for it, whether it's here in a sports environment for fun, for entertainment, or for our actual warriors that need the discipline and need to learn those tactics and skills to protect us and to survive and protect themselves. I think both those things are going to continue, and it's going to become more and more ingrained in our population and more necessary. I don't see it going anywhere.
Randy, you've had so much success. You're a multiple world champion. You've been in movies. You've done so many things. You've set so many goals. You've achieved so many goals. How is it that you are so humble and one of the most generous men that I've ever met? I've
found through my own experience those times when I thought my crap didn't stink and got a little cocky or full of myself, I got humbled pretty quickly. The next time you stepped out there on that mat or up in that cage, you got your butt handed to you. And that only needs to happen a couple of times before you analyze and figure out, okay, what was the issue here? Was I overconfident? What was the deal? And I realized that I needed to first start with humility. Everything I do and everything I try to do, I act with humility. And I try to end with humility. And I just assume that every single person I meet is better at something than I am. And that puts me in the right mindset to figure out what that is and to learn and become a better person and a better athlete from whatever that, and it may take me a little time, but keeping that open, keeping that in my mind, I put myself out there to figure it out, to learn what it is that they're better at than I am. And I think that allows me, again, to keep an open heart, keep an open mind, and continue to progress and get better all the time.
Randy, thank you so much for being the man that you are and being such a great role model for all of us to look up to. I appreciate everything you've done in my life, and I wish you all the happiness in the world.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you.